Nintendo defenders and Nintendo haters have been arguing non-stop over the past year or so about the Switch 2. So I wanted to look at some of the biggest criticisms of Nintendo to see which side is right for each one. So at number 1 is Nintendo Switch 2 has no games. So for this one and all the other points in this video, I want to take a look at both sides and then give my answer, trying to be as unbiased as I can be. So we will start with the anti-Nintendo crowd, and then they say that the Switch 2 has no games, like it barely has any third-party support. It doesn't have many games from Nintendo themselves, or if there are games, that they're just not good. And the other side says that the Switch 2 actually has a lot of games and a lot of great games from Nintendo themselves. So I think when you have two extremes like this, I think it's usually somewhere in the middle that is usually the right answer. Because when you have people who are very emotionally attached to Nintendo or just hate Nintendo and emotions run high that way, you're usually not going to get great arguments. You're usually not going to get great answers. So on one hand, I do agree that the Switch 2 could have a better first-party library. Like, it's been out for over a year now, and I do think that it is kind of missing some of the heavy hitters that you would like. Like, I think Donkey Kong Bonanza is a great game. I think Pokemon Pokopia is something that a lot of people have really fallen in love with. Recently, we've gotten Star Fox, we've gotten Splatoon. So I do think there are a lot of quality games. I think there's even a couple of great games, but I definitely understand why someone might be underwhelmed by the first-party library that Nintendo has, especially when you are paying a lot of money for a console. And then in addition to that, we've actually been getting a decent amount of third-party support, like Capcom's new games, Pragmata and Resident Evil. And while these are not the best ways to play these games, like obviously if you play on PC or if you play on PS5 or Xbox Series X, you're gonna get better performance and better visuals, but you're not playing it on Switch 2 to get the best version. You're most likely playing it on Switch 2 so you can play it on the go. So I've actually been pretty surprised by some of the third-party support and how well some of these games run and look. So as of now, I don't think the Switch 2 has an incredible library or anything. Like, it's been out for, what, a year and 2 months now? So I definitely don't think if someone says, like, this is the best library we've ever gotten in the first year of a console from Nintendo, I don't agree with that. But also, I think saying the Switch 2 has no games and it has no good games, I just don't agree with that. So saying it has no games, obviously they don't mean that literally, but they're saying that it doesn't have anything worthwhile to play. I don't agree with that, and if you don't like the games on Switch 2, again, that's a personal opinion, so I can't say that you're wrong if those games don't appeal to you, but I definitely think there are a lot of quality games on Switch 2. I just want to say before I get to the next point, I try to be fair towards Nintendo, whether they're doing something good or something bad. So if you want to hear more of my takes on other Nintendo topics and other video game topics, be sure to subscribe and help me reach 90,000 subscribers. And now the next point, another big one, is that Nintendo's pricing is fair. So Nintendo's pricing, that means consoles, it means games, accessories, all those things. So looking at the Nintendo defenders first, they say that the $500 price for the console is good, that the games are priced fairly, that the accessories or the amiibo or whatever are priced fairly too, or at least they're not that much. And then the other side says that the games are like highway robbery, that the console is just a ridiculous amount. And I don't think there's as clear an answer to this one. So I think $450 for the console is fine. I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with that, but honestly don't think it's bad value for what you're getting. Like, yes, it is not going to be as powerful as a PS5 or a Series X, and I don't know why a lot of people were like shocked at that fact or acted like that's a bad thing. If it was just purely a home console, then yeah, I think there's a good point there, but this is a fraction of the size of those consoles. It is made to play games on the go. And with the PS5 and Series X going up in price, the Switch 2 is now actually cheaper. So I actually think that the console price is pretty fair. However, with games, that's where I start to agree more with the Nintendo haters. So I don't think every single game Nintendo's made is overpriced like they say, but a lot of Nintendo defenders just excuse the prices. Like, they'll be like, well, $80 for Mario Kart World might be like a little much, but I think it's okay. No, I don't even think Mario Kart World's a $70 game. I think it was really lacking in content. I thought $80 for that was just absolutely absurd, and it was probably just to get people to buy it with the Nintendo Switch 2 system itself. But that doesn't change the fact that Nintendo themselves is saying this game is worth $80, and I really just don't agree with that. And I think games like Mario Tennis Fever, I think that being $70 was just absurd. And that goes for other sports games too. I know someone's probably going to comment and say, well, Madden and MLB The Show and PGA Tour, they all cost $70. Yeah, I don't think those games should be $70 either. But the point is that I think a lot of the games Nintendo's been making have not been selling as well as they would have liked. Like, I've been seeing a lot of sales on Nintendo games, not by Nintendo themselves, but like through Costco, through Woot, and even in the secondhand market. Like, it feels like a lot of games have just lost a lot of value really quickly because I don't think people are necessarily buying these games at full price. Really, the only Nintendo Switch 2 game I think was really worth $70 was Donkey Kong Bonanza. I actually thought that was a fantastic game. I can understand why someone might think it's a little much, but I was fine with paying for that. But like Kirby Air Riders, Hyrule Warriors, Mario Tennis Fever, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, like I just don't think $70 is a fair price for those games. I've actually gotten a couple of those games cheaper. Like, I've gotten Mario Tennis Fever and Kirby Air Riders for like under $40. And then games like Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, we've seen actually be $10 cheaper. So like the digital price is either $50 or $60 for some of these games, but they'll be $10 $10 more to get physically, but Walmart and Amazon has price matched the digital price. So I think something like $50 for Star Fox or $50 for Splatoon Raiders is a much fairer price. So I haven't played those games. I can't give you an answer on if it's worth it. But I think $50 for those games, for example, is a lot more justifiable than $70 or $80. Like now with Fire Emblem Fortunes Weave, where I think that's an $80 game, but it's going to be $70 on Amazon and Walmart. Like if you can get that game for $70, I don't think it's as egregious as $80. And lastly, for accessories like controllers being like nearly $100 and Joy-Cons, I think actually might be $100. Amiibo prices have kind of skyrocketed. Like some of them have been over $50, and I've seen them on clearance now. Like the Kirby ones were going for like under 30 now, or maybe even cheaper, because I just don't think people wanted to buy these for those prices. I think those prices were ridiculous, if I'm being honest. I think the quality of Amiibo has gotten a lot better, but when you're raising prices this drastically for something that is just a figure, like yeah, you can use it for games, but being honest, no one's actually buying it for that reason. They're buying it as a collectible. I just don't think there's reasons to buy most of these in full price, because I've seen so many of them just go on sale. Same for the controllers and accessories like the camera. So overall, I think both sides here have points. That like the console itself I think is fairly priced, but the games and some accessories have been overpriced. But with that, I made another video on this. You can try and buy games for cheaper if you're just a little patient, if you do some hunting on like eBay and other sites like that. Overall, I would lean towards Nintendo's prices being higher than I would like. Like, I don't think the value is necessarily there for a lot of the products. But like I said, I don't think the console price is unfair. And now the next point I want to talk about is game key cards are the worst thing ever. So I don't think anyone actually loves game key cards. I think it just comes down to if you think it's okay, or if you literally think it's like evil incarnate that it even exists. So my views on game key cards have changed a little bit. At first, I was probably closer to that side where I thought they were just awful. I hated the idea of it. I still don't like game key cards. Like, I still would obviously rather not have to use the internet for my games. But with Sony and probably Microsoft going all digital, if game key cards are a way to keep games on physical cartridges, on physical media, I would take that over just the other option being digital only. Because yes, with game key cards, I guess it is kind of like a license where you do need the internet to download it. So if they wanted to take that away at any time, they probably could. But also, at least you can sell that game, you can lend it to a friend, you have that physical game. I don't think it is the worst thing ever. Like I'm not against buying a game key card if it's the only option. However, it can definitely change my opinion on getting a game. Like if there's a game that I was interested in on Switch 2, and the only physical option is a game key card, there's a good chance I'll either wait for it to be on sale, maybe get it on another platform. So that's my view on that. And also Nintendo themselves, like their first party games have not been on game key cards. So it seems like they're still prioritizing putting games just fully on the cartridge. And it may be because other games exceed 64 gigabytes and can't fit on a cartridge, or they want to encourage more third-party support since Switch 2 cartridges are more expensive to make. So I understand why they exist. Again, not happy about it, but I do think it is better than the alternative of just digital only. Next up is Nintendo is anti-consumer. This is just a very, very popular one, and this kind of ties into all of this. And there's going to be things I talk about even more that you could say should be part of this, but just to look at this on its own, almost all companies are anti-consumer. Like Sony, I think they are the worst now. I think that one decision to get rid of physical games immediately just skyrocketed them as maybe one of the worst companies in gaming, if not the worst, for setting this precedent. And look, Nintendo does a lot of bad things. I think a lot of people who are completely loyal to Nintendo kind of excuse some of these things. Like they like the product that Nintendo puts out, or they liked Reggie Fils-Aimé or Miyamoto or Iwata, and they kind of put like a face to Nintendo. They're like, well, if you're hating on Nintendo, you're hating on Miyamoto. Because that's like the idea of Nintendo that they have in their head, when in reality, Nintendo is just a mega corporation. Like, Nintendo's goal is to make money. If they put out a good product and you feel it's worth buying, then by all means buy it. But I think a lot of people kind of have like a parasocial relationship with the company where they try to excuse some things Nintendo does. Like by anti-consumer, like you could say it's them being very litigious, which I will get to. You could say it's them pricing things high. You could say it's some of the games that they're making. And overall, I don't think Nintendo is the worst company ever. I don't think they're the best either. So when people say Nintendo is anti-consumer, I mean, it depends exactly what they're doing. I'd say there's probably a lot of times where that person is right, saying that they're making a very anti-consumer decision. But at the same time, I think there's other companies that are doing a lot worse things, both to the consumer and to their employees. Like, I don't think we've seen Nintendo have massive layoffs. I don't think we've seen them have terrible conditions for the workers. And I could be wrong on both of those. If I am, let me know in the comments. They are still putting out exclusives. Like, they are still giving people games to play. I still think they care about the products they're putting out. Like I know a lot of people like to say that, well, their games are just soulless now. I think the people who are making the games still really care about them. Like, I think when you're thinking of something like that, like Assassin's Creed, like that whole series, like Call of Duty, like I understand more, or that feels like the product is made not out of any sort of artistic vision or to genuinely put out a great game, but it is made for the sole purpose of money. And what I mean by that is like, yes, all games are going to be made for the purpose of money, but I feel like with those games, they're putting them out and saying, let's make money from this rather than let's make a good game and have that sell a lot of copies so we make money. Maybe that makes no sense because both of them are trying to do the exact same thing, sell a lot of copies and make money. But I feel like for the most part, Nintendo's games, like it still feels like they have actual like care put into them. Like they're not loading them with microtransactions and stuff. So maybe what I'm saying makes absolutely no sense at all. Overall, I would say is that Nintendo is obviously not pro-consumer. I don't think really many companies are. But I think it is a little overblown when people act like they are the worst company ever. Next up, and this ties into this, is Nintendo's DLC is ridiculous and overpriced. So I think that Nintendo's DLC, I don't like what they've been doing with it, at least for the most part. So I don't think DLC is inherently bad. I know a lot of people will point to games with DLC and be like, well, they're just trying to get extra money out of you, like this is awful. And in a lot of cases, I do agree. I think the best uses of DLC is when the game comes, like it's completely finished, like you get the main story, you get everything you want with the game. And then afterwards, they start working on like a story expansion or something. Like something like with Resident Evil. So I don't like how they've had like, I guess it's technically microtransactions for like some of the costumes and stuff in the game. I don't like that, but it's not really extra content outside of like some visual stuff. But once they release the game, if they start working on like a story expansion later that wasn't already done and that they didn't intentionally cut out of the main game so they could sell it, I'm okay with that to get more out of the story. My problem with a lot of Nintendo DLC is that it's obviously something that they just either cut or were working on when the game was being made just so they can make some extra money. Like with Donkey Kong Bonanza, it was a cool concept what they added, but what was it, $30 for all of that very shortly after the game released. So obviously it was worked on side by side with the game. Pokemon Pokopia, I think it's a little expensive for what we're getting, and it, again, was not long after the release. With Pokemon, and that's not really Nintendo, that's more Game Freak. But yeah, like day one DLC, I will never support day one DLC. And by that, I mean like DLC that literally is available from the start. If it's something that is being developed later, like a year in the future, something like that, but they announce it, I have a little more favorable view on that because they genuinely just might have to put a lot more time into working on that. It might not be done for a while. So I would generally say that I have not liked Nintendo's DLC approach. However, at the same time, a lot of their games just don't have DLC. Like, I feel like they utilize DLC a lot less than other AAA developers. And also, it doesn't feel like their games are unfinished or that they're just adding in a bunch of microtransactions. It just feels like they are just trying to get this extra money. Now, next up is Nintendo is too litigious, meaning that they just sue left and right, like way more than they need to. This has been a joke for a very long time where someone will say, like, no one's allowed to be named Mario and Luigi anymore because Nintendo will sue them. So a lot of people like to dunk on Nintendo with this, but I want to give a more nuanced answer. Yes, Nintendo is very litigious. Like, there's no getting around that. I think that they do go too far sometimes, like with shutting down some fan games, where I think when they had their whole, like, Nintendo creator program on YouTube, like 10 years ago, that's gone away since. Something like that. It wasn't exactly litigious, but it was kind of like preventing people from making content without Nintendo getting a cut of it. I think that was indefensible. As for fan games, if someone is just uploading their game, like, straight up, or maybe, like, making something inappropriate with it, like, I get Nintendo protecting their IP, but then when you have fan games that also aren't trying to make money, that are just uploaded to, like, a flashlight, or I know Flash, like, isn't around anymore, but when it was, I just think that's pointless. Like, I don't think Nintendo's losing business because of that. It just feels like they're going too far in trying to protect their IP. Like Sega with Sonic Mania, like they brought on people who created a fan game to create one of their best Sonic games, maybe their best 2D Sonic game, like, since the 90s. And then you also have Nintendo doing things like suing Power World for just mechanics in the game. Like, that's not a good look. It's not something that they need to do. It's just something that is just going too far, in my opinion. So yes, I would say Nintendo is too litigious. I think a lot of people just like to say it as a joke. I mean, it could be funny to talk about as a joke, but I think there is at least more nuance. Like, I don't think that every single time Nintendo sues or sends a cease and desist that it automatically means they're in the wrong. But yeah, like with the whole Power World thing, like something like that, it's just bad PR, and I don't even know what's happening with that, so I don't want to speak too much on that, but I would agree more with the anti-Nintendo crowd on this. Next up is Nintendo relies too much on remakes. Immediately, I'm just going to say I disagree with this one. I think there are definitely companies that are remaking games more than they should, like where they're not making new games. But if we just look at this generation, or go back to even the start of the Switch, we really haven't gotten that many remakes from Nintendo, like on the Nintendo Switch. Like some of the big ones, I guess, would be Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, Super Mario RPG, Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Star Fox Now, Ocarina of Time. obviously not out yet. There's been a couple small ones, like there was one collection of the visual novel, I can't remember what it's called, on the Switch. Advance Wars 1+2, Reboot Camp, a couple Pokemon games, and I'm sure there's others I'm forgetting. But I think a lot of these remakes were actually kind of necessary. Like Super Mario RPG, fantastic remake, love the original game, and this just modernized it, made it a lot easier to play. Again, I love the original, but I think the remake is the superior version of it. Same with The Thousand Year Door. It was a game that you couldn't play on the Nintendo Switch, and it's an all-time great game that I wouldn't even say was held back by some issues, but the remake literally just fixed up some of the annoying parts of the game and made it almost a 10 out of 10 game, in my opinion. And then you have other ones that are like smaller titles, like the Mario vs. Donkey Kong one. Was it that necessary, or was it that big of a game? No. Was it overpriced a little bit? Yeah, but that's a smaller title. Like most of Nintendo's games are still original games, like not remakes or remasters. And my problem more with remakes is when it's either not treated with care or if it's used as a replacement of original games. So something like Star Fox, I don't think it's a necessary remake. I don't think that makes it a bad game. But I understand the criticisms of people saying we haven't gotten a truly original Star Fox game in however many years now, especially since Star Fox Zero was basically like a reimagining too. So now we're getting that instead of a brand new game. So that I understand. But something for like Ocarina of Time, we're still getting 3D Zelda games. We got one 3 years ago. It's going to be a few more years, so I think that's completely justified. That's giving Zelda fans like something to hold them over. It's a remake of a game that came out nearly 30 years ago, and the last remaster/remake, whatever you want to call it, came out on the 3DS in 2011. So I think it could definitely improve. I think it's probably going to be more of a reimagining. Plus, it's not being used as a replacement for a new game. So no, I don't think Nintendo has been ridiculous with remakes. I think for the most part, they've been pretty good. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, like again, that's more Game Freak, but those weren't good remakes. I don't think it's that they were unnecessary. Like I don't think bringing back that generation was a bad thing. I just don't like the way they did it. And a lot of their like remasters/ports, I think are fine. I think some of them are a little overpriced. But something like remastering Xenoblade Chronicles, like we got the one on 3DS, which is like kind of a demake. Fine with that since that game wasn't playable on Switch. Same for something like Xenoblade Chronicles X. A lot of games were just ported to Switch just because no one played them on Wii U, so I'm fine with that. Even though a lot of those aren't even really remasters, they're more just ports. And now the final point I want to talk about is Switch 2 editions. And this one, I'm on the Nintendo hater side. I think that Switch 2 editions, just the pricing for them, is kind of absurd. Like when you have games that came out almost a decade ago for $60, and slightly improved versions are being sold for now $70, or sometimes $20 more than the original price. I think this is one of the worst things Nintendo's done in recent history. Because you're telling me Breath of the Wild, which launched 9 years ago, it was $60 at the time, is now worth $70 because of some small improvements. And yeah, if you have Switch Online, then you get it for free, or if you already have the game, you could pay $10 for it. I think that's besides the point, though. They're saying that this game came out for $60, and now it's worth more because of small changes. And it doesn't even include the DLC, which I think is the worst part. Nintendo's like the only company I can think of that does this. Like I talked about Resident Evil before, but usually they'll make like a gold edition or deluxe edition, or Game of the Year edition or whatever, and it'll include all the DLC and it will be cheaper than the original game. So now the game is more expensive and doesn't even come with all the content. I just don't think there's any way to justify that. Like, I think that is pretty absurd if I'm being honest. And if the Switch 2 editions are being used as replacements, like if, for example, if the Switch 2 version of Animal Crossing New Horizons is being used as this generation's Animal Crossing, that's something that I would be completely against. If Switch 2 editions were just meant to be like ultimate editions that have these improvements, have the DLC, maybe even were slightly cheaper, I think it would be looked at a lot more favorably. And some of them have DLC, but like Mario Party Jamboree for $80 because you add like a face mode, whatever it's called. Like there's just no world where that game is worth $80 just because it has that. So like something like that kind of ties into Nintendo's pricing being fair. Like I didn't talk about it before because I wanted to wait to talk about that later. Like it's things like that where even if a lot of Nintendo's games may not be overpriced or you might be able to get them cheaper, people are just going to look at that and understandably like be upset about it. So anyway, those are just a handful of things that people critique Nintendo on. I've tried to be as fair as I can. I think Nintendo does get a lot of unnecessary hate. And I think a lot of that is because some people work so hard to defend Nintendo to the point where it makes you want to hate against Nintendo. Like I've seen people that are just so loyal to Nintendo who will just excuse anything they do that it honestly makes me want to shift over to the other side of disliking Nintendo more, even though Nintendo may not have done something wrong in that fact. And I'm being a little hyperbolic there, but the main takeaways, if you made it to the end of this video, is don't go into every decision Nintendo makes or everything Nintendo does and just be like, well, this makes them evil or this makes them the best thing ever. Try to get a nuanced opinion, because a lot of these things aren't as black and white as they seem. But like people are going to look for the answers that they want to get. Like, there's something called confirmation bias, where you're gonna look for the answer that you want, whether it's true or not. So if you think Nintendo games are overpriced, like, you're gonna look at people who agree with you, you're gonna look at whatever you can to justify that, and the opposite's the same too. If you think Nintendo games are fairly priced, you're probably not gonna be persuaded by any other argument because you already made up your mind. I also think just being just a pure Nintendo loyalist or a pure Nintendo hater is cringe. I think it's okay to dislike a company. Like, if you say I dislike Nintendo or I like Nintendo, I don't think that's cringe, obviously. But if your first reaction anytime a company does something is to either hate on them or just support them regardless of any sort of context, I think that's more of a you issue. I think Nintendo discourse has just gotten out of control. Like, I try to stay out of it for the most part, just because you're not going to change most people's mind. I'm sure there's people in the comments who are saying I'm a grifter or a Nintendo hater, and then other people saying I'm a Nintendo fanboy. Like, obviously those two things cannot be true at once, but people are going to hear me say something positive about Nintendo or say something negative and not agree with me, and then use that to get angry and use that to try and discredit what I'm saying or just name call. And I think that's just the issue with discourse on the internet. There's no getting around it. I just want to try to give my thoughts on this and try to be as neutral as I could on this. No matter what you do, people are going to hate, people are going to disagree, so try to not let it get to you. Anyway, if you enjoy this, if you want to hear more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and join my Discord, and I'll see you next time.